This could be titled Wiring for AI, Wiring for Entrepreneurship, Solopreneurship. There's obviously a lot of layoffs going on. You have a lot of smart people that are being laid off, a lot of people who are making a lot of money, being just San Francisco, Seattle, or just seeing Washington in general is just seeing a lot of layoffs on the West Coast. And those layoffs are going to be coming across the United States. There's just going to be a continuous wave of layoffs as everybody adjusts to AI. So today I was vibe coding and I thought about it. I said, I read another article about another, Meta just let off 10% of their workforce. I just read something about San Francisco, 1,400 people. I just read something about Seattle I think it was 142,000 people have been let off because of AI this year in one way or another. And I'm thinking there should be a video on wiring for AI, wiring for entrepreneurship, because it is definitely a skill that we are going to have to learn. This is a skill that is required pretty much for everyone. I've really broken down the buckets into 30%, 30%, 30%. And then maybe a 10% somewhere else. I don't know about that 10%, but 30% is, and this is just wild exaggerations. This is going to be 10 people or less in companies, and probably mainly are going to be, probably most of them, maybe 20% will be solo. Then you have mid-tier, and then you have large. So this will obviously always be a thing. You'll always have your Alphabets, your NVIDIAs, your Metas. You always have the Fortune 500, Fortune 1000. But I think what's going to happen is we're really going to decentralize. Right now, we kind of are like this, where the top 90% own or the top 10% own about 90% of everything. Obviously, the Pareto's principle was 80-20, but now that there's more people, there's more money, there's more wealth, there's higher GDPs, there's more competition, more companies, everything. It has really become 10-90 in my humble opinion. In the future, it's obviously not going to be this flat. It's not going to go like this to this overnight. However, I do believe it's going to be like this. This is going to be the 30%, and then obviously 15 for the mid tiers on either end. And this will be 15 for these guys right here. So how do you, if you are part of, say, even this, because these are going to be entrepreneurs in mid-tier companies, and then these are purebred entrepreneurs or startups. We're seeing wild valuations right now. 4 people valued at $10 billion, raising $193 million. It's just every day you can get onto Perplexity, which I use for my AI and all of my tech news, and I look at it and I go, they'll have a picture of 4 people. Raised, one was, it was like going after enterprises and wrapping a brilliant model for people that are contractors, people that are part of, say, the mid-tier companies that are still making a lot of money, but they're not going to be on the Fortune 5,000 just now, or maybe the Fortune 1,000 just yet. So how do we gain the skill, adjust to AI, and wire for this huge piece of property or people that will come down the line? Because there will be a subset of people that will unfortunately be gobbled up, and they will not be able to participate fully in the economy. We already have that now where we say, listen, here is housing, here is benefits, and we're always going to need that. I think that percentage is going to grow rapidly. I think there's going to be people that are not going to be able to bridge the gap in creativity and intelligence. Once you add in robotics and automation and things, robo-taxis, once you start adding in these services that are completely run by robots, there's going to be a very large and unhappy contingency of people that we need a game plan for. Whether we give them compute or tokens or a share of AI models, I have no idea. I'll leave that up to the thought leaders. What I want to talk about is the skill of adjusting to AI when it comes to solopreneurs, mainly these 60% right here. Mid-tier, I would say 50 and under. Large is, I'm just making up numbers. But the first thing you have to understand with entrepreneurship, and, I've been a caddy since I was a caddy from age 12 to, for 7 years. Then I was doing Cutco door-to-door sales. Then I was at a startup. Then I was a server. I had a small little startup in college. I was always entrepreneurial. I had, I would take people's stuff in college and sell it on eBay and then take a cut of it. Like, I was just always minded. I've been a broker owner since 2000, last 12 years. So, and a real estate agent for 17 years. So my mind has always been in the entrepreneurial realm. What I've noticed is the world in which the way you look at it, you have to look at it as objectively as possible. Elon Musk would say first principles. You have to look at the way that it is and not the way you want it to be or you wish it was. Okay. The wish is potentially the solution in which you are actually creating your company. But you have to be like, okay, against my feelings, against my lens, against my nurture, the way I was raised, the way that I am, I have to objectively look at it. You know who's very good at this is Jensen at NVIDIA. He looks at it and he says, okay, objectively, where are we right now? And that's why he's successful, because when you look at things objectively, you can then start to say, okay, there's a problem, but there's also little diagram that we could draw out. And I did this in a previous video, and I thought it was a good thought exercise, which is, what do you like to do? What are you good at? And what makes money? Obviously, this like this is only for Elon Musk, Zucks. That's very rare because you also need the intellect, the will, the energy. You need a lot to get into there. But I said, okay, if you had to choose, what would it be? And between like good and money, a lot of people choose money, even though they don't like it, but they're good at it. So a lot of people land here. Those are maybe private equity. Those are potentially attorneys, doctors. They're good at it, good money. They sort of like it, but they don't love it. I personally think in the grand scheme of life is that you really want to aim to be content, Content, people would say, well, that's a low standard. I don't look at it as a low standard. Being content doesn't mean you're happy. Content means in the general direction in which you are heading, not day to day, which is happiness. And that's a fleeting feeling. So happiness is a bad one. And a lot of people talk about it and they say that, no, that's a bad metric. That's a bad metric. Happy is a stupid metric for a multitude of reasons because you can't sustain happiness. That's essentially why. If you sustain happiness, you are essentially going down pleasure at the end of it. Okay. Happiness leads into pleasure, and then pleasure leads to unhappiness because you need more. It's an addiction. It's an addict. That's why being content, you want to be good at it, make money, and like it. And liking it, I would put that at about 40%. I would put the rest probably around 30-30. Why do I say this? Because you need to come back to it day to day. It's not even 333 for all of them, which leads up to 99. And the reason being this, I would even be convinced, even if this is at say 35 and this is at 25 for money. And so this is what you like, this is what you're good at, and this is money. The reason being is I just met someone and she is 100% like me. She said, I cannot go to work if I don't like it. Not even if she's good at it or makes money. She said, I can't, that's her starting point. So the weighted average for her is probably about 60%. For mine, that's very close to about 60% as well. Okay, I'm just wired that I can't fake something. I can't fake liking something. That's why I was bad at corporate America, and that's why I only stayed for 2 years, and then I've been a real estate agent for 17. Because my weighted average is probably 60, and then this is probably 10, unfortunately. And then the rest is about good at it. It might even be 55 or 50, 40, 10. This is probably mine right there, where money, okay, that's great. But my contentness matters. So how does this relate to the skill of entrepreneurship? If you're going into the workforce where it's solopreneurs, 10 people or less, 50 people or less, 100 people or less, 500 people or less, or whatever, right around there, say 100 or less, and then 10 or less, you pretty much know everybody in the company. So you can't fake the corporate America. I know a lot of people that make a lot of money and they're sort of good at it, but they hate their job. I know a lot of people like that. I ran into someone local and I ran into them and they just looked miserable. They made a lot of money and they might have been pretty good at it, but they've been there for so long that there's no variety. And when you're in this, there's a lot of variety, maybe too much variety for a lot of people. That's why they need stability. But in this world that we're coming into, stability is no longer around. There is no stability. Stability is out the window. That's why, obviously Tony Robbins has talked about this. Why did I leave with objective? Because when you are stable, you think you're going to be happy, but there's no variety. And when there's no variety, I spelled that wrong. Maybe, yep. I don't know. When you are objectively looking at the world, you can differentiate the difference between, is this stable? Is there enough variety for me? And the reason I say that is you can't be content looking at the world subjectively. If you look at it, is there an L? Is there subjectively? If you look at the world subjectively, you will have big problems because you're essentially going into happiness, which is not contentness. And when you're subjectively looking at it, you are looking at it potentially just in the money or just in, am I good at this? But I make no money. I'm really good at this, but I make no money. Or I make a lot of money and I don't like it. That's a dangerous place to be in. So going on to the actual skill, let's go on to the actual skill. So you've been let off from a very large company. You want to get into vibe coding. You want to get into entrepreneurship. The number one thing you have to look at through the world is this is the three biggest things. Money is the solution you have to look for. Solution has to include money. Okay. A lot of people build things where there is no audience. Everyone has already talked about that. So the solution to a problem that you see is, I'll just talk about myself for a second. I don't see a lot of content creators that put a lot of things together because I used to be in business, personal development. I was in personal development. I've spent tens of thousands of dollars on coaches, on tens of thousands, over $100,000 easily. I've put the money, 250, that might be a little too much, but 250,000. But over the last, God knows how many, I've read hundreds, if not over 1,000 books. I would hire a coach for 10,000 for the weekend. I've had business coaches, $1,500 a month for years. I had triathlon coaches. I just was in the realm of, I don't know, but I will figure out the skill. I will figure out the skill of real estate, of health, of sleep, of triathlons. I will figure this out objectively, against my will, against my judgment, against the way that I see how it should be, could be, want to be. Health, there needs to be movement and there has to be nutrition. If you do a lot of nutrition and you don't move, that's not health. You have to do both. And I wish that was not the case. I wish I could just literally sit down. I wish I could eat whatever I want. I wish money would show up at the doorstep. But again, you're thinking of it subjectively. So objectively, I don't know. The skill of entrepreneurship is essentially saying, okay, there's a lot of problems in the world. What is the one I can solve? What is the one I can solve? So I'll just talk about myself. I looked at the world and I said, okay, there's not a lot of this is when I went from a brokerage onto a broker owner where you are the broker, you're part of a brokerage. You own the brokerage. I said, well, a lot of people are not putting out content. A lot of people, this is 2013. A lot of people are not doing video. A lot of people don't have their own websites. A lot of people are not differentiating themselves from the actual company. They don't have their own logos. And when I started to do this, the company that I was with was like, we got to run this by legal. We got to run this by the marketing department. We got to run this by your manager. We got to run this. And I just said, yeah, but I'm an independent contractor. Like, I don't care. It doesn't matter. You have to do all these things. So I found a problem. What is the solution? Going out on my own. How do I make my own money? The problem was there's no one with a personal brand really pushing it forward. Now it's obvious in social media and everything else. Back then, it wasn't. I looked around and I'm like, we're all the same at the same company if we can't do anything different. So what is the difference between us? That was the problem. There is no difference between us right now. Last year, I went on and my Salesforce bill was due. So I had Salesforce as a CRM. The invoice came into my email and I was playing around and I said, man, I've been paying this for years. I hired all these people to about 50K in developers and I have it exactly the way that I want. But every year I keep on paying all these SaaS products. I pay for MailChimp. I pay for Squarespace. I pay for Riverside and Opus Clips and Salesforce. And it's just like, dude, what is going on? So finally, after a while, I got frustrated. There was a problem. I am paying all of this money and all of these things in my life can actually be solved potentially in the future. I did not know that. I had a problem. I had no solution. So the solution when I went out on my own, that was the solution. Okay. So the skill that people need to say is, okay, what problems are bothering me? That's going to go into the like and good at. We're not talking about the money yet, but what is bothering me? Maybe there is a marketplace that doesn't exist that you really want to create. Maybe there is content. We all have to be lowercase c creators. So essentially, and this is obviously part one. This is going to be multiple parts on getting because this is a mindset skill. This is a mindset skill. This isn't a physical skill. This is a mindset you must develop. You have to. It's developing it. It's not installed. It's not an app. It's not something you get overnight. You have to continuously go through life objectively, looking at the world on how it operates and say, actually, there's a lot of problems, not like socially. I'm talking about this restaurant. Actually, it's really nice, but there's not a lot of windows. What if I opened a restaurant that was this quality? I like the way it's set up. I like how easy the menu is. Actually, the menu font is really nice. Their website is really nice. I like the way they intake people at the front door. They give you a 10% discount if you scan their QR code, and the QR code is hooked up to a area in the back of the back end of the system that gives me 10% off if I order whatever they want me to order, because they're pushing that at the end of the month. That is deep level thinking. You will get there if you walk into places and you say, this could be done better. The arrangement of the screens. I'm at the salad place and I go, there's from one end to the other end, there's probably 1, 2, 3, 4 menus with 8 items each at least. There's 32 things. That is way too much stuff. You got to you got to cut it down. You got to have paradox of choice is a thing. I walk in, I'm ordering my salad, I'm sitting in silence. I go, this could be done better. I see a problem. There can be a solution, and they probably would make more money, because during the times that I get my salads, people walk in and then they walk out because they just potentially get overwhelmed. It's not because they don't see what they want, because they have literally everything. They have warm bowls, they have salads, they have wraps, they got everything. You can go custom on anything. So personally, I think the problem is there's too many options going to recently. So my Salesforce invoice comes in. There's a problem. I'm paying all this money out. I'm on Claude, and I'm really, this is last fall. I'm like, what is going on with Claude? I love it. It's amazing. It designs well. This is way before, everything with vibe coding and everything else. But I said there's something very weird. There's this area called artifacts, and there's a place called code. I click on it. Long story short, I say, can you make it said, what website or app do you want to make? I said, can you make a Salesforce? This window pops open. I go, wow, that unlocked everything. I said, you got to be kidding me. I have a major problem. I have a Salesforce bill. I have all these SaaS products that I pay out. I'm going to see if I can build my own. Long story short, I went through 3 6-week builds that just flopped. I spent thousands of dollars and I failed. Okay. That is going to be part of entrepreneurship. I don't know, but that will probably lead to failure before you get to success. But what I was really, really, really liking was that, or what the feeling I got was that I really liked this. And I started to gain the skill of good. Well, there was no money. This is probably where you will go back and forth for a while until you get money. Everyone's heard of the McDonald's or the KFC story. Everyone has a founding story where they made no money. They door knocked, things like that. The like and the good, you're going to like it. You're probably going to get good at it. The money aspect is probably going to be the last one. That's probably going to be the last one. You're never going to get this and then immediately get the money. That's very rare. That's very rare. So the failure will come in due time when you really like something and you're starting to get good. It's I'm getting really good. Ooh, that's a skill I didn't know. You go down. Ooh, I'm really good at it. Okay, that's a skill I didn't know. And you're just literally going to get 1% better every single day, getting the mindset of solving a problem while continuously showing up every single day. 1%. That's it. I have content here. Content is 1% better every single day. Why? The compound effect is real. The compound effect is real. Everyone has heard of the compound effect. If you haven't, it's essentially you're not getting 1% better. You're getting 1% better on the 1% better you got the day before. You will never have just good days. I know that from vibe coding. I put out a video about that. You're never going to just have good days where you could have an amazing week and month, but there will be a crash. As much as you go forward, you're probably going to recede about 25%. For me, I'll talk about my failures. I already failed at 3 different builds before I built this one right now. which is a community of like-minded builders, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs that are positive about AI in the aspect of how that can help themselves personally. The thing is, during that time, I said, and I was only saying this, I'm going to build it on, everything's going to be built on my Mac Studio. It's going to live there. I'm going to own everything. Nothing is going to be going anywhere else. I'm not going to use Git. I'm not going to use Vercel. I'm not going to use anything else when it comes to it. Mac Studio, open source all the way. Then I started doing videos and I said, okay, what's my value? So I'm building the skill. I already have the mindset, but I'm building the skill within vibe coding. So I go, okay, well, that's not good because if I do a lot of videos, that's dependent on my internet service provider, my RAM, and my storage. That's not good. Let's put it on YouTube. Okay. Okay. So that was a failure. Mac Studio, not good. That was coming down. So I reach a pinnacle on my Mac Studio, and I go, okay, let's go. And now we're going down. Now we're going down. We're not getting 1% better. I'm not content, but I'm showing up every single day. I'm just showing up. This is the timeline of time, the timeline of time. This is time, and this is ability, or how good you are, whatever you want to say, ability. Okay. So then I said, okay, everything is going to be on YouTube. It's their servers. It's fast. It's not my storage. Everyone knows their interface. Everyone knows, how to play it and everything like that. Then I said, okay, then they could share it. People could share it. So why would okay, maybe it's just available as community members that pay. Okay, maybe that's not good because they have to pay in two different places. If they cancel, they have to cancel in two different places. That's not a good user experience. Plus also the YouTube interface, that's a little, it's not elite. Okay, that's not elite. We're elite here. Okay. So, okay, let's scratch that. And I'm still going down. I come to the conclusion that goes against what I started vibe coding with, which is on my Mac Studio, I own it. Everything's there. I'm not using anything. I'm not paying for anything. Everything is open source or it's free and I build it. I had to go and I had to be humble and say, I don't know, but it's not YouTube and it's not my Mac Studio. It's Cloudflare. Okay, Cloudflare. Well, the problem is the time is still going like this. My ability is still getting better, but even though I'm going up, I'm still going down, if that makes sense. Because I'm like, the build is getting better, or the build is getting better, or I'm getting better, the build is not getting better. That's the best way to say it. I'm getting better. I understand that I failed. You have to be humble. And I'm giving my example of building the skill of entrepreneurship because the speed in which AI is going right now, the amount of models that are getting released, the amount of competition between servers and data centers and compute and chips and open weight versus closed models is accelerating at a time where you can't really be sitting in the problem. You just have to be forced into a solution like immediately at all times. That's why I am doing brainstorming sessions within the community that shows this is how I brainstorm. I brainstorm and I just take action. And these people have to take more action than them, and they have to take more action than them because they're already at the top and they already have the money. They can stall for a little bit. A mid-tier can stall. A solopreneur cannot. A solopreneur has to go or else this is going to be lacking. That's going to be lacking. So I essentially went to Cloudflare. Now we have a problem, a bigger problem. Everything was wired to my Mac Studio. I would upload a video, a YouTube title, a YouTube description, a YouTube thumbnail, a beautiful article would be written. It's all wired incorrectly. I got to pivot. Version 2, okay, everything's the Cloudflare. Literally for days, I've been trying right now, right behind the camera. I'm still trying to get this up and running. So I am still in failure while being humble, while being objective during the entire problem and saying, okay, I just need a solution now because I already have the problem. The entire process is based on an old model, an old way of thinking. So now Cloudflare, once it comes online, I'm going to start creating content. And now I'm going to get to an area where I hit another snag. I don't know what that snag is. I personally think it might be too many members using the website. That's probably the potential snag. And the best way to think about this is look at other people that are potentially ahead of you that you can say, okay, what problems did they hit? Because I'm probably going to hit those problems when I scale. when I need memory, when I need it to be faster, mobile ready. Is there an app involved? How do I do the payment? How do I pay out people if there's multiple people there? What if I bring somebody on that's I don't know, maybe your first employee? There will be another problem. Promise you that. There will be another failure. You got to be objective about it. So right now I'm building out the system. And then what is this entire rise going to be? This is going to be content for me. Content is my value. That is my value. Content is my value, which is videos. And then the members have been writing articles. So this is my value. This is my value. That's what you have to understand right here. This is the squeeze. Very important that you understand this. If you have a problem and you find a solution, there has to be value. What is your value? And that was my video last week. I went through a brainstorming session. I said, what is my value? Why would somebody pay money? Why would they part away their time and their money, the two most valuable resources, their time being one and then their money? Why? Because their money is something that they use their time to acquire. So those are the two most important resources: is where is my attention and where am I spending my money? And I said, why would somebody come to my website and essentially, I don't know why I erased that, but why would somebody come to my website, which is icharles.com. So it's iCharles, link is below. Why would they come to this website, part with their time and their money? What is my value? Well, I have a problem and this is it. Okay, what is my value so I can deliver the solution? And I came up with, I am the value. Okay, when you spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on coaches and flights and traveling all over and seeing hundreds of speakers and dozens, if not hundreds of conferences, reading hundreds, if not over 1,000 books, you are the value. But guess what? You got to be the most humble person, the most objective person, because there is nothing worse than having no accountability to you being the value. That's why Michael Jordan has coaches. That's why coaches have coaches, because they are the value. They are the product. I am the product. I'm building the product and I'm also the product. I'm both. I'm not building a SaaS. So in your skill set of becoming an entrepreneur and adjusting to AI and wiring your brain to entrepreneurship, you have to understand you are the value. So when I was at the real estate company that I was an independent contractor, it's the exact same thing. I go, well, if I'm making the videos, I'm doing the outreach, I'm doing the closing, I'm doing the presentation to the owner. I'm the one that gets the listing. I'm the one that goes there and schedules in the photos, videos, floor plans, writes the description, puts it live, shows the apartment, exchanges the keys, meets with the attorneys. I'm the value. So I better treat this skill very important. I better develop the mindset for the skill to adjust to AI. And the 30% here, the 60%, in an AI world, the people become the value, not the other way around. That's the exciting part, is that there's a lot of negativity around it because they're outsourcing their value onto the robot, onto the AI. And again, like I said, there's going to be a vast amount of people that we will have to give services to like we do today. It's going to be at a very high number. I'm not excited about it, but it will also be very good for people when it comes to health. Lawyers cannot charge $500 to $1,000. Will there be some? Yes. Will there be others that don't? Yes. Contracts. I've written contracts through AI that has researched all of New York State, all of New York City's real estate laws. I've made websites that go to tailoring to make sure it's up to real estate, New York City, ADA standards. I can't personally do that, but that would have been outsourced up to 6 months ago. When you understand that you discover the problem and you're the value to the solution, everything is unlocked. It's freeing. You're content because you're the one that fails, but you got to be humble. You're the one that has to remove the subjectivity. You have to be less subjective about it, your own lens, your own views, your own nurture. You got to be like someone who goes, okay, Tony Robbins said this is very good, is that you have to see the situation or the problem or the failure for how it is, not better than it is. In other words, people put a rosy lens on it, or worse than it is and freak out. You just got to say, here is the problem. I can't host videos on my Mac Studio. And this is easy. That's an easy one. A harder one is I'm going to move from having my license hung at another company to starting my own. And now the value is me. I saw the problem, and now the solution is solely on me. That's a bigger one because that was many nights, back of the hand math. If I do really bad, if I do mid-tier, if I do really well, wrote out all my expenses and just racked my brain. I just said, you got to do it. You got to do it. You got to do it. 17 years later, here I am renewing my license for the whatever time, coming up on 8 or 9 times because they do it every 2 years. And then you're a broker. And then either way, the skill set for an entrepreneur, solopreneur to wire a brand, to adjust to AI is understanding that the sole value of you in an AI world is you. You got to develop you. You got to develop you because you is going to have the authenticity, the value system, the objective mind, building the skill, developing the mindset. This is part one because the best way to take action, the call to action for this video is understanding that silence, moving through the world in silence, not like not talking to anyone or not making content or things like that. But I mean, unplugging for a little bit is going to develop your mind and your ideas more than anything, more than anything. I've said this in other videos. I don't know if they're live on the YouTube channel or to the iCharles community, but this is the most important thing. Silence plus humble, gosh, my spelling is perfect, equals silence, walking around in silence, looking for problems. How would I make this better? You're the value. How would I make this better? I see a problem. How would I make this better? Silence plus humble equals ideas. This is what you need. Creativity. Just say even creator, lowercase say creator. You're going to get those because you can't even see the value. You're in your own mind. You can't see the solutions. You are the problem. If you're not silent, you're not humble. And I had it right here. And you keep on asking the question, I don't know. I don't know that Mac Studio was going to be a bad idea. I didn't know that my brokerage was going to not want to have my own. I couldn't have my own website. I can't have my own logo. I couldn't do my own property tours. I couldn't do anything. That's a problem. I could have stayed there and just maneuvered in the ocean of the problem, but I'm the value. This isn't a selfish thing. This is just an objective, realistic thing that when you stay in silence, you ask questions and you're humble, ideas and you creating and creativity will just flow. It will just flow. This takes time. This takes time. This you need to develop. This skill you need to develop. So for all those people that are being laid off and, done really well in school, went to MIT, went to, Harvard Business, they went to Kellogg, they went to Duke, they went to all these big Oxford, and then they're hired at their dream job of making $350,000 to $500,000 coding or developing or design or data architect. It doesn't matter because AI is not adjusting to us. We have to adjust to AI knowing that we are the value. They have to go through this whole process. It's going to be very hard. And there's going to be a lot of anxiety, a lot of just, I don't know if this is going to work, but there's got to be a lot of humbleness. There's got to be stripping out subjectivity, which is, I went to school. I spent all this money. I went to business school. I spent all this money. I was at this business for 5 years, making a huge amount of money. And now I'm laid off along with 140,000 other people, all vying for the same small amount of jobs. Well, guess what? As I had it right here, the world is going from this to that, where the pinnacle is now going to be like this wide. So I look at it as a good thing. I look at it as a good thing. We hit a breaking point. We hit a failure point, and the only solution is knowing that you have to create or understand the problem, not create. You have to leave your comments below. I read all the comments because there's not enough. But we're going to be coming out with a lot more of these videos. This morning when I was vibe coding, I just literally read the news. I just keep on reading the news every single day. And just out of nowhere, I just said, people are not ready for this wave. People are just, their mindset, their skill is not developed for this mindset. This is a mindset shift. The new economy, adjusting to AI, is a new economy. It is, the old economy is done. Kind of like when we went from cash to plastic, credit cards, cash to credit cards, horses to cars to interstate. We went from the internet to cell phones. This is a new one. It's going to be more extreme, and it's not a bubble. It's not a bubble. Maybe there's going to be little pockets of bubbles, but the internet was not a bubble. There were pockets of the bubble, maybe valuations, but this is here to stay. The mindset is going to be the biggest shift. That's the value I bring to the community. I noticed that. I go, well, all of my experience, all of my objective opinions, all of my failures, being humble, sitting in silence, developing from a problem my value to the solution is why I have iCharles. I've had this domain name 15 years, maybe not that long, but really long. I saw it available. I copied someone called iJustine. I don't know if she's still doing her thing, but she was an incredible content creator. She was incredible. And I go, iCharles is available. And I bought it for whatever. I don't know and I just kept on hanging on to it. And I'm like, well, time to release it. 15 years later, after I've gone through life like this. So it'll be interesting. I have a lot of original opinions that I've written down. I have a content sheet right there on the desk that I go, you know what? Today's the day to release this video. So if you like it, leave the comments below, subscribe. If this is on YouTube, I don't know where it's going. I'm just shooting a lot of content because I don't have it here. That's my value. My value is the content, to be content. And for me, being content is everything. I'm joyful. I'm happy. So grab you guys on the next one. Hope you enjoyed it.